Adani presents Times Network Sustainability Conclave 2026, co-powered by Mahatransco, a platform where environmentalists, industry leaders, policymakers, experts and change makers came together to share insights and accelerate India's journey towards a sustainable future. The event followed with a fireside chat with Sunita Narayan, Director General, Centre for Science and Environment.
You're somebody, who has worked relentlessly on environment, on climate-related issues. And when you say something about climate and environment, the world really pays attention. So that is why what you tell us today is going to be extremely important. So let me begin by asking you, we're here to discuss building a climate-ready India. Firstly, help us understand, what do we mean by climate-ready India?
I think that's an excellent question. So what do we first mean by climate change? Let's understand it, how it is emerging in our world. So climate change today is happening. I say this often, Hina, because, when we started the conversation on climate change, I was in Rio in 1992, we talked about climate change, we talked about a framework convention, but it was all about the future. Something would happen in the future. And there were models that were predicting things. Today, reality is happening and we see climate impacts. How do we see it? If you take the data for last year for India, from the Indian Meteorological Department, IMD, collated by my colleagues, you find that there is one extreme weather event a day, one a day, happening across India. Now just think of the impact of this on farmers, on laborers, on construction workers, when heat levels increase, when there is too much rain, when there is too little rain, when it becomes too cold because you have a bad cold wave. So that is what we are seeing in terms of climate change. And we definitely know today that climate change is here. Climate change impacts are real, and we need to do something about it. Now, your question to me is, what do we do? What does this climate-friendly, climate-resilient India mean? In my view, what it means is getting our priorities right to get local development, local environmental management right. For us, climate change will not be the first reason to act. For us, the reason to act will be local air pollution. But if we do something to fix local air pollution, we also will fix climate change. If we do something to fix the need for reliable, affordable energy in the hands of the poor, the conversation you just had with Ashish and the gentleman from IREDA, then you fix energy security in India, but you also fix climate change. And I think I can go on like this. I mean, let me give you one favorite example of mine. We live in Delhi. It's so hot in Delhi we now have the monsoons, of course, but we remember the heat that has preceded this. Now, we know this is a double whammy. We know on one hand, temperatures are increasing. On the other hand, we're doing everything wrong to exacerbate temperature increase. We are doing more concrete. We are doing more air conditioners. We are cutting down trees. We are destroying our water bodies. We are building our cities so that they become more vulnerable to heat. We are making buildings with glass, without windows, no ventilation, without fans, so that they become more intolerable when the heat levels go up. Thermal discomfort goes up. So to me, what we need to do is to fix this. If we fix this, we build our buildings in a way that they are designed for thermal comfort. We will make sure that our air conditioning needs go down. We are able to cope with climate change, and we have a more livable city. So we'll discuss this, I know, but I just wanted to give you a glimpse of why climate change is compatible with sustainable development. And that sustainable development in turn requires us to have affordable and
Right.
inclusive growth, which then means it's sustainable. So there is no, it's a question of reimagining the future. And
Right.
as I'm here and I can see a lot of young people in the room, I have the courage to say this to them. It's about reimagining. It's about having the courage to think differently and not to follow the same route to energy security or water security, to think about an India which is resilient, which is green.
You began your environmental journey in the early 80s. Looking back, what inspired your commitment to environmental advocacy? And after decades of working on these issues, what continues to give you hope and keep you motivated?
My journey started actually when I was in school and just, and what really got me to understand environment was when I met a lot of people and I traveled to the Himalayas, met the women of Chipko, and I understood from them, why do the poor people of India care about, why do these poor women care about the forest? Not for reasons that an urban Delhi person, elite school person cared about the trees, but for them, trees were their survival, gave them the fodder they needed, the protection to the soil. For them, environment was their subsistence. And that has motivated me all my life. Those words have changed who I am. And that learning has continued to stay with me. But what gives me hope today is just the sense that the crisis is too big. We're just going to have to make a difference. And what gives me hope is a sense that there are solutions there. When the last oil crisis happened, we didn't have solutions. Today, when you look at the Hormuz crisis, you have a solution there. You have countries which are beginning to disengage and say we can definitely move out of, we don't have to first move to fossil and then move to renewables. It's the same thing when it comes to vehicles. You don't have to first get onto a car and then get onto a bicycle. You're already on a bicycle, and let's celebrate that. So I think it is the crisis is the opportunity that we have and the solutions. But my only point is, and I think that's what I'm stressing more and more today, don't look for small solutions to such a large existential crisis.
Right.
The answers also have to be big, which is why when you asked me what my advice to the chief minister is, I hesitated because it would have been easy for me to give her a one-point solution, but I cannot, because we have to keep showing the mirror to what really needs to happen. Because if we don't do so, we fall into the trap of these very genteel, polite conversations which don't shift the envelope.
Absolutely. This is the time for action, and some tough measures also need to be implemented. Ms. Sunita Narayan, always a pleasure to talk to you. Please get well soon, and hope to see you here with us on the stage next time when we have this conclave.
Absolutely. Promise.
Thank you, ma'am, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This was followed by an insightful presentation on the topic all about plastic.
Did you know that every year 800,000 tons of tamarind seeds, imli, are thrown away? They have almost no value. Almost. It is either discarded, left to rot, or burnt. So we thought, why? Why aren't there other uses of this? Scientists have discovered a property called xyloglucan in every tamarind seed out there. They have researched it for food science and pharmaceuticals. So we thought, why not incorporate this property into another solution? That is plastic. Plastic is a low-cost biomagnetic powder made from waste tamarind seeds that removes microplastics from water quickly, safely, and without electricity or complex infrastructure. Now, we know there are already existing solutions out there for microplastics, whether it may be ultrafiltration, cell membrane filtration, or even, something as basic as your RO. But we thought it requires expensive infrastructure. It requires money. It requires, resources that a lot of communities out there don't have. So that was exactly what we wanted to build Plastic on. So say, for example, for something like a rural school or a government body or a disaster relief camp. Not only that, Plastic also follows a circular approach. Once our tamarind seed, which is the plastic powder it is made of, has pulled the microplastics out of it, we are exploring about how we could remove those microplastics and fill them into tiles and coasters. So say, for example, anything that could be composite, that could be separated from the plastic that we have already taken out, because we want to make sure that the plastic we do take out does not make its way back into your nearest water body.
So the next few days for us are going to look essentially at 4 different things, which is validation, production, implementation, and partnerships. So as for validation, we're looking at independent third-party validation to test this product across different water types and different microplastics, because what we used was a model, but to make our solution genuinely accessible across different regions, seasons, we need to test it in different conditions. The second would be production. We want to look into how we can sort of build local micro-production hubs that are decentralized and close to tamarind production factories, because we want to build this product with and for the community that we kept in mind throughout. The third would be implementation, expanding from just a few deployments to actually the whole world is what we're looking at. And the fourth would be partnerships. We want to integrate our product into existing systems. We don't want to replace what we already have, like NGO water programs, municipal access initiatives, and CSR pipelines. So that's how the next few days are going to look like for us.
Times Network Sustainability Conclave 2026 saw conversations set around India 2035, a self-reliant and a climate-resilient nation. Amidst this, an interesting presentation on the importance of storytelling in climate and sustainability, presented by Shrishti Kukreja, co-founder of Gen E.
The journey started with a coconut straw, right? So Femi and I, in our previous organization, were given an assignment to do a sustainable story. We came across the story of a professor who makes coconut straws. We reported that story. It went viral. But numbers is one thing, right? What it did was create a lot of interest in that product, and a major 5-star hotel chain actually switched from paper straws to coconut straws. And that's where we realized that with good storytelling, we can create a really huge impact. And today, that impact continues. We did a story on Udupi saris, which are hand-woven. The video went viral, but most importantly, the saris sold out. We did a story on STP water being turned into potable water. Now, water is a subject that most see as very boring, so it didn't get as many views as it should have. However, Nitin Kamath saw that video and he tweeted it, and the founders got 300 calls in a day, and they made headlines in mainstream media. Right? We did a story on El Sita. It was covered by Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, and it started a conversation about how the Bangalore Development Authority should proceed with its doings. And finally, we did a story on bamboo, which was about bamboo packaging. And we saw in the comment section that many people were tagging e-commerce websites and asking them to make a switch to sustainable packaging. So climate storytelling, when it's made relatable, when it's made engaging, it won't just help us kind of go viral, but it also helps us create impact on the ground and start conversations amongst people who are young and old. So here's what we've learned, and this is how we approach our stories. We like to keep it simple. We like to focus on the solutions. We like to talk about today and not tomorrow. So the problem of melting glaciers in the Arctic is a far off problem, but what about today? What about the heat that we are facing? What about the water problems that we are facing? What about the garbage problems in our area? We like to talk about those problems. And finally, and the most important aspect of Jenny is that we are trying to build a community that we can act, whether it's that one like, one share, one comment, or that one peer-to-peer connect that we can start because our DMs are flooded with people who want to connect with these entrepreneurs.
This was followed by a panel discussion on the topic, creating a culture of sustainability.
For a common man, once you create a culture of sustainability in this country, what does it mean?
Thank you and good afternoon to all of you. I think that's a wonderful question put across. What does it really mean when it comes to being sustainable, feeling that sustainability is around us? I think that's what the key word is. I think to begin with, I can say that we come from a country where we've had the ethos of sustainability ingrained in us. Right? Very often we end up saying that the very DNA of the country has sustainability inside us. So therefore, it is something that we relate to. It's something that we all understand. But to think that what does it mean when we say we are sustainable, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that it must go beyond just compliance, right? It shouldn't be that companies are doing things because they have to do what they have to do with respect to environmental compliance, that people are just following and doing what needs to be done because the law says so and so forth. I think a culture of sustainability would entail a system of corporate governance, a system of citizens kind of governing themselves, with systems with kind of thinking that sustainability is not something out there, sustainability is not something that has to be done, but our very own actions should entail sustainability. So I think a system of governance, a system of corporate performance where we are looking at making environment the mainstay and not just that environment is something which we have to comply to. I think that's the key step when it comes to mind when we say what culture of sustainability will be all about.
And anyone who's used the internet in India has come across the month's website, portal, the Better India. I mean, the repository of stories that you have, the change makers that you put spotlight on. And, I love behavioral science. And one of the things that I have read somewhere is the fact that when you continue focusing on positive stories, it tends to create more civic participation and tends to actually lead towards sustainable solutions than actually putting across stories that create anxiety or create fear-mongering. How important is it in your experience, because you've been in this for so long, creating stories, individual stories, highlighting them in a manner that it actually goes beyond just being an individual impact story and into a broader movement?
The last 15 odd years of covering stories at the Better India, I think one thing has really stood out for me, which is that people copy behaviors. People don't copy a government manual. So if there's a policy on environment, people don't sit and follow that and execute. But if they see that the neighbor has put in a solar panel and has cut down her bill by 50%, it's a great incentive. People start copying. So if you ask me, sustainability isn't really an environmental problem, but it's more a cultural thing. And the way we kind of should try and solve it is through showcasing as many success stories around sustainability as possible, keeping in mind that people don't become sustainable because we preach about it, but people become sustainable because there is economic benefit that leads to living more sustainably. What does that mean? It means that if you figured out rainwater harvesting in your apartment complex, you are having a steady supply of water all year round. Not because you want to save the planet, but you say, hey, look, it makes my life easier. You get off the grid because you get to install solar panels. You do waste segregation because you have cleaner neighborhoods, all of that stuff. How does someone even envisage that these are the benefits? And to me, I think that's when the power of stories comes in. If I'm able to consistently keep showcasing that there are huge success stories of people living sustainably and benefiting from it, and here's how you can do it. And that's the part that's very important, right? At the Better India, we've always focused on how an ordinary citizen that you can relate to, if they are able to do it, why can't you do it? So, yeah, firm believer in the fact that it will be stories that will change behavior.
Right. So just building on that, because it's a very interesting point you made, that the more you focus on, and again, like I said, the behavioral science, the more you focus on positive stories, the more likely do we see positive results as well. And speaking about that, let me go across to Prachi as well. Prachi, everyone talks about global warming, but that's the problem. Your app is called Cool the Globe. Right there, you're talking about the solution. You're not talking about the problem. Just help me understand the work you do with the app. How's your experience been? And what is your motivation that went into creating it?
Absolutely. So, like you rightly asked, we keep hearing about climate change. As a young girl, I wanted to have a career that was making some kind of a difference. And I remember doing a Google search on what is the biggest problem in the world right now, and global warming and climate change popped up. And I remember being surprised because scientists, organizations, people around the world were talking about how climate change is the biggest issue in front of us. Nobody around me was really talking about it. So as I read more about it and the role I played in it, it bothered me. And I remember going to my father and asking him, what can an ordinary girl like me do about a big problem like climate change? It seemed too overwhelming. So we decided to start from our own home. We took a challenge that year to reduce our carbon footprint by 10%. But how? Which activities of mine are leading to most emissions? How do I reduce them? So I started reading up on that, started taking a few simple actions at home. We put up a solar panel, started recycling. Then I realized that if I had to continue on this journey, I needed to be able to measure the impact of my actions. Just the way we track the calories in our food, can I know the emissions behind my actions and the emissions I'm saving with my sustainable actions? So we started tracking that. Now, as soon as we started doing that, something very interesting happened, which is that I started having fun. We began to enjoy it. It felt like a fun game we were playing at home, and it felt good that at least at my own level, I was doing something. And maybe because I was enjoying it so much, my friends, neighbors, people around me started to take notice, and they would come to me and they'd ask, you're doing something interesting, and we'd like to join you in this challenge. And that's when I started thinking, how can I take this individual quest I've taken to solve climate change at my own level and get global citizens to join me on it? From this Cool the Globe app was born. So I started building it from my dorm room. And when we first built it, I remember my mother teasing me that only you and your father are going to be the two users of this app, because who wants to make changes in their own behavior for global warming? But when we started throwing out our sustainable challenges and campaigns, we were very surprised to know that, like you said, people liked being a part of the solution. People do want to do something, we just don't know what. So we would see that people would come on the app, record a climate action that makes sense in their life, like a 9-year-old girl who asked me, what change can I make in my life to fight climate change? So she started going to a school on a cycle and recorded saving 60 kilograms of carbon emissions by doing that, which was 3 times her weight. Another 80-year-old woman called me and said, I can't move around much. It's not like I can walk or take public transport, but I still want to be a part of the solution. So her granddaughter was getting married, and for the wedding, instead of buying her own new clothes, she decided to reuse her own sari from her wedding, recorded saving 15 kilograms of emissions by doing that. So we saw how one action inspired 10 others and created a ripple effect. Now it's been 7 years to that. We have reached over 25 million people, and we have users from 150 countries being a part of the solution and fighting climate change in their own lives on Cool the Globe app.
All right, thank you everyone. A big round of applause here for all our panelists. Creating a culture of sustainability, that was the conversation. I think we have started doing that a little bit through this conversation. Thank you.